All right, quick F1 video because it's coming out late. Water has plagued the weekend. Okay, we had we had water in and out of practice sessions, and really the first practice session was a complete wash. When we're looking at the race tomorrow, and you look at the weather, it's being projected that it's going to rain heavily in the morning, and it probably won't be racing at the time of the start of the green flag for the F1 race. Some people are looking at this race possibly starting in a wet track, but then not having any other rain for the rest of it. Some people are projecting it to be raining slightly at the beginning. We'll just have to see. Clearly, we're about 12 hours away from the start of the race right now. I'm leaning towards this race kind of starting damp and wet, probably raining right before the start, and we have seen these guys, or the F1, the FIA, postpone the start of the race just like they did at Monaco. So that might be a case that might be something that they do here. But I'm leaning towards this race being ran in the dry. Outside of the initial start, I'm pretty sure I'm leaning towards it being dry. And I'm leaning towards the guys who have shown speed in the dry conditions this year. We're slowly getting to the point. We're not there yet, but we're slowly getting to the point where we could start dipping our toes into possibly playing different constructors and captain drivers, just due to the fact that we are seeing Mercedes slowly get up there and getting close, getting right on the heels of competing with Ferrari and Red Bull. Not necessarily beating Red Bull because they're still the top, but being right under where Ferrari is. And so we're looking at a possibility to where we might slowly start getting into a situation this year to where, I'll use Verstappen in this race for an example. We might have a situation where Verstappen is first. We have the two Ferrari drivers in second and third, and then Perez would be like fourth, and then the two Mercedes drivers. And we can kind of rotate those drivers around and see what kind of different lineup constructions that would work in terms of who else is in the podium position. I don't think this is the week to get there, but leaning towards the next race, I'm very curious on looking at building lines with a constructor that isn't necessarily correlated with the driver that you have as captain. Might be something we can start looking towards. But this week, when we're looking at how people qualified due to the qualifying starting in the wet, basically raining the whole time, and towards the end of qualifying, it stopped raining. They were able to slowly get a groove dried out, but everything else is still in the wet. We saw Verstappen spin out and still be second fastest and barely miss the pole from Carlos. I'm leaning towards Verstappen winning this race. I know, shocker, but that's what I'm leaning towards. I'm playing Verstappen. I'm playing Red Bull as a constructor. We need to figure out where we want to go from there. I'm leaning towards building this race with leaning towards people like Bottas. And I just went blank. Let me pause this real fast. Fernando Alonso. Even when we start looking at plays like Vettel, I think those are just the guys we have to fit in, man. Do I think it's worth trying to get different and trying to build a different line with somebody like Hamilton, who I think can compete for a top 4 finish, with somebody like Lando Norris, who I think can be on the fringe of being around 6th to 5th, and possibly with how the race ends up going, possibly finishing a bit higher. Yes. However, when we get to like the bottom value, like Albon is running the better equipment. Williams brought they brought newer components, and Albon is running that over Latifi. The only reason Albon is starting 16th and Latifi got in the top 10 is due to the fact that it was raining cats and dogs, and Albon's team completely messed him up in terms of strategy. And we can look at that the same way that Aston Martin went. Aston Martin just completely missed the strategy for Q and have both their drivers starting deep in the field. That's why I don't mind Vettel starting 18th. I think he can compete for a fringe top 10 finish, for a fringe top 9, and he's going to beat his teammate. And so this is a week to where I think, and I mean, we kind of always end up running into this, but unless somebody like Ocon Rex, or if Albon Rex and Latifi ends up beating him or something, I think we're going to end up running into a very, very chalk line winning this race, just because we're so limited on who we can play just due to qualifying, really removing 4 main guys from the pool. We can't use Lance Stroll. We can't use Zhao. We can't lose Latifi. And we can't use Gasly. Those are 4 guys that are usually somewhat viable, but I just don't see it from these guys. And Sure, if you don't trust Gasly, do we really trust Sonoda? Like, those guys are a fringe, like, coin toss. And so Alonso, Albon, and Vettel are the only guys that I see being viable in your lines and being in builds with Verstappen. And so I'm leaning towards this being a pretty chalk slate and the winning lineup being pretty chalky. And so unless you, like I said, unless you want to try and get different and get, say, Leclerc or Hamilton in your line, then you're going to have to hope that Albon runs into issues, that Bottas runs into issues, and I don't see that happening. I just see this being a very, very chalky slate. And I know F1 has been chalky a lot this year, but this is one where I really do believe it's going to be a pretty high chalk fest. And so I'm probably going to limit my lineups in this race just because I don't think I can get different enough and feel comfortable without rooting for a situation where Verstappen blows a motor or has an issue, and I don't see that happening. I just see it as Verstappen, Red Bull being the two highest scoring guys in their respected positions, and you're just stuck to use Alonso, Vettel, Bottas, just those three guys, just try and get it to work. That's really the takeaway for me. I know this is a late video. I know we're only around 12 hours away from the start of the race, but that's just where I'm at. Start of the F1 season. Maybe you like the NASCAR stuff as well. Feel free to join the F1 and NASCAR tier on Patreon. Since it's the start of the month, you can join and get access to numerous sheets that are actually easy to read. They save you time. They're not like just numbers that are like stupidly confusing to read. Consider joining us. Consider supporting the work that Pearce and I do for both F1 and NASCAR, and I will see you guys later.